An elderly man rescues a freezing bear cub in Siberia. Full story conclusion. Imagine the coldest place on Earth. The wind cuts like a knife, and snow stretches endlessly in every direction. At 7-1 WC, life is a battle, and survival is never guaranteed. Yet, amid this harsh, unforgiving Siberian wilderness, one man stands quietly against the elements. An elderly man, weathered by time and the merciless cold, moves carefully through the frozen forest. Every breath comes in visible clouds, and every step is measured, deliberate. The crunch of snow beneath his boots echoes in the silence, a small reminder of human presence in a land dominated by nature's extremes. From the moment we first glimpse his small cabin, we feel both isolation and resilience. The logs are frost-covered, icicles hang like delicate daggers from the roof, and smoke curls from the chimney, a tiny promise of warmth in a frozen world. Inside, he tends to the sparse comforts of daily life, but the wilderness outside never stops pressing in. Each day is a struggle, finding firewood, checking for food, enduring the biting cold that seems determined to claim every living thing. The man's face tells a story of endurance, deep wrinkles, a frost-kissed beard, and eyes that have witnessed decades of Siberia's brutal winters. There is loneliness here, yes, but also strength, courage, and a quiet determination that defines him. As we follow him through this frozen landscape, the cinematography of the moment becomes almost tangible. Wide shots show endless white forests, skeletal trees, and frozen rivers reflecting the pale sunlight. The camera lingers on the micro details, the frost on his eyelashes, the shaking of his hands as he secures firewood, the delicate patterns snowflakes create as they land and melt against his coat. These small details are crucial. They immerse the audience fully in this world. Every step he takes is heavy, measured, deliberate, because one slip could be deadly. In this session, the story isn't about action yet. It's about building tension, mood, and environment. We feel the cold, the danger, and the extreme isolation. But even in this silence, life stirs. Birds flit briefly across the snow, distant howls echo through the trees, and the occasional footprints of wolves remind us that the wilderness is never empty. These small signs of life contrast sharply with the man's fragile human existence, emphasizing just how perilous this environment is. The viewer begins to sense that even the smallest decision here, whether to step onto a frozen river or climb a snow-covered hill, can mean life or death. This tension sets up the anticipation of what is to come, planting the seeds of curiosity that will drive engagement. The audience is asking, what will happen next? What unexpected challenge will this man face in a place that refuses to forgive? The cinematic storytelling in this session is subtle but essential. The pacing is slow, deliberate, reflecting the monotony and danger of survival in extreme cold. Every long shot of the endless snow, every close-up of frost-covered tools, every silence interrupted only by wind or snow crunching underfoot, builds the atmosphere. We feel not just the temperature, but the weight of isolation, the relentless pressure of a world indifferent to human struggle. The man's actions are small, almost mundane, stacking firewood, checking his trap lines, but each is imbued with significance because survival is never trivial in Siberia. Even as the day unfolds, the story plants a hint of what is coming, a sound carried on the wind, a movement glimpsed among the trees. Life, fragile and desperate, exists even here. The audience feels it, sensing that the frozen wilderness is about to deliver a moment that will test courage, compassion, and humanity in ways even the man cannot anticipate. The forest is silent again, but this time the silence carries a subtle tension, a whisper of life that feels out of place in the frozen emptiness. The elderly man trudges carefully through the snow, each step deliberate, boots crunching against icy ground. The cold bites deeper than before, wind slicing across the barren landscape. At 700 GC, the slightest misstep could be fatal. Yet the man continues, his instincts finely tuned by years of living on the edge of Siberia's harsh wilderness. But then, a sound breaks the monotony, a faint, desperate cry, carried on the icy wind. It is so soft at first that it could be mistaken for the whistle of the wind through the trees. Yet there is something unmistakably alive in it. His sharp eyes scan the white expanse, seeking the source. There, partially hidden in a drift of snow, a small, trembling figure appears. A bear cub, frail and frostbitten, ivoring violently against the merciless cold. Its eyes are wide with fear and confusion, and its tiny paws barely leave marks in the snow as it tries to move. The man's heart tightens at the sight. He knows the dangers, both for the cub and for himself. Approaching a wild animal is never without risk, especially in these conditions. But the vulnerability in those amber eyes, the almost human plea embedded in the cub's trembling, awakens something deep inside him: compassion, courage, and the unshakable drive to act. He moves slowly, measured, his breath forming clouds in the frigid air. Every movement must be precise. A sudden sound could startle the cub, and yet hesitation could mean its death. The audience feels the suspense immediately. The tension is palpable. In these moments, time seems to stretch, the vast forest holding its breath along with him. The cinematography of the scene is crucial: close ups of frost-covered fur, trembling paws, and desperate eyes. Snowflakes settle gently on both man and cub, accentuating the surreal beauty of this frozen drama. Wide-angle shots of the desolate forest reinforce just how isolated this encounter truly is, a tiny moment of life amidst an unforgiving wilderness. As the man approaches, the cub recoils slightly, instinctively fearful of humans. Yet there is a silent understanding in his gaze. His hands are steady, movements deliberate, as he reaches out with a thick glove and gently scoops the cub into his arms. The small weight of life against his chest, fragile yet pulsing with a faint heartbeat, strikes an emotional chord. The wind continues to howl. The snow swirls around them like a living, icy entity, but for a brief moment, it feels as though the world has slowed. The audience is drawn into this intimacy, feeling the raw emotion of trust forming against the odds. The forest has grown darker, shadows stretching across the snow-covered terrain. The wind screams with renewed ferocity, icy gusts battering against the elderly man as he moves cautiously through the Siberian wilderness. In his arms, the tiny bear cub trembles violently, each shiver a stark reminder of how fragile life can be in a place where survival is a constant struggle. At 700 EC, there is no room for hesitation, no margin for error. One misstep could be fatal, yet the man continues, guided by a courage that transcends fear, driven by the instinct to protect a life far smaller, weaker, and more vulnerable than his own. Every step through the snow is a battle against nature itself. The deep drifts threaten to swallow his boots. Hidden ice patches lurk beneath the surface, and the bitter wind seems to push him back at every turn. Yet the man moves deliberately, his eyes scanning constantly for danger. His body aches with cold, his muscles strained. But there is a determination in his posture that tells the story of a lifetime of survival in extreme conditions. For the audience, every frozen detail, the crunch of snow underfoot, the swirling of ice-laden wind, the frost forming on his eyelashes, creates a visceral, cinematic immersion that is impossible to ignore. The cub clings instinctively to him, tiny paws brushing against the rough fabric of his coat. It whimpers softly, a sound that pierces even the howling storm. The man whispers reassurances, soft, calm words meant as much for his own heart as for the cub's. The juxtaposition of the tiny, fragile creature and the immense, merciless wilderness creates an emotional tension that grips the viewer immediately. We are not just watching a rescue. We are witnessing a test of human courage in a world where the cold does not forgive weakness. By the time the cabin appears in the distance, relief mingles with tension. The man quickens his pace, but not recklessly. The cub is still frail, but there is a subtle warmth spreading through its body, a tiny victory born of care and courage. The snowstorm begins to subside slightly, the harsh wind giving way to a quieter, though still biting, cold. The contrast between the overwhelming danger of the journey and the approaching safety of the cabin heightens the emotional payoff. Viewers feel both the exhaustion of the struggle and the profound relief of survival. The storm has passed, leaving behind a frozen world sparkling under pale sunlight. But inside the elderly man's cabin, warmth radiates like a fragile beacon of life amidst the relentless Siberian cold. The tiny bear cub, previously shivering violently in the icy forest, is now nestled in the man's strong arms, wrapped carefully in thick layers of fur. Every shiver, every trembling paw, is slowly replaced with tentative warmth. The cabin, humble and sparse, has become a sanctuary, a fragile bubble of safety in a land otherwise indifferent to life. As he sets the cub down near the small hearth, the fire crackles softly, casting golden light across the wooden walls. Shadows dance, long and dramatic, echoing the journey that led them here. The cub blinks, its small eyes adjusting to the warmth and light, and for the first time, there is a sense of trust beginning to form. The elderly man kneels, speaking gently, almost whispering to the creature that moments ago was alone and terrified.